what to do, how to deal with the fact that Xitter is a Nazi bar, is a machine for fascism. And you and I think both agree, and we've been talking about this for quite some time, that Twitter is designed. Elon Musk has designed Twitter to spread fascism. And I'll go through the history of that because it's a background to why I approach Twitter in the way I do, Xitter. It started at least by 2015. There was a group, there was a DM list of far right wingers and an actual Nazi, the guy who was then the webmaster for the Daily Stormer, a guy by the name of Andrew Auenheimer, started professionalizing their efforts to troll on Twitter. And three things that they did starting in 2015, and it continued through the election. One was they got very good at playing the algorithm, and they would do that with bots, and they would do that with boosting each other's posts. They mastered the ability to mob Twitter. A second thing they did was they mastered the ability, and they a lot of this comes from the trial of a guy named Douglas Mackey, and from the testimony of a cooperating witness. And they did this very deliberately, and they did this very well. One of the things they set out to perfect was hijacking discourse. One of the things they did was take Hillary Clinton ads about women, reaching out to women, and turn them into attacks on Hillary's warmonger. They would present her as a warmonger. It was very clever. It was very smart. So they were taking existing discourse and, as the cooperating witness described, repurposing it, redefining it. And then the third thing they did was they gamed using Twitter to set the narrative for the press. One of the things they would do, for example, is they would make sure particular topics were going viral by 7 a.m. on East Coast time, knowing that New York Times would use that to decide what to cover that day. And again, they got super good at it. This group of trolls, not all of them have been identified, but very importantly, Don Jr. said that he was part of it. And there's this moment in October of 2016 where WikiLeaks is pushing Don Jr. to disseminate, to push the Podesta files, and a figure on these chat rooms called POTUS Trump, and that other people refer to as Donald, was disseminating the Podesta files. So in other words, Don Jr. was in this chat room, and there's this moment halfway through the election where a guy by the name of Baked Alaska started recruiting some of those guys to work directly with the campaign. So this was an effort that was very closely aligned with Donald Trump's campaign, and it was very, very effective. They, however, did occasionally get moderated and in some cases banned, especially for using bots, including by Jack Dorsey personally. So very effective thing. Immediately after the election, they're like, we did this. We won the election for Donald Trump. Let's go interfere in an EU election. And that led them all to go interfere in the Macron election the next year. And their takeaway was, this is a great tool, but we need to do something about the moderation. The moderation actually got worse in response to Russia's interference, right? So by 2020, this was the approach that Donald Trump used. This is exactly how Donald Trump got everyone to believe that the election was being stolen from him. And if you look, there's this great table that Stanford's now closed election group put together, and they showed that the 20 most effective spreaders of election disinformation were all Trump people. They were Trump, his sons, Cat Turd, Jack Posobiec. The least known one is the guy Mike Roman, who was charged with Trump in Georgia, who's kind of his dirty tricks guy. It's stunning the degree to which they hijacked, they used Twitter to spread those false claims. Now, before the election, Twitter and Facebook moderated those kinds of things. As soon as the election was over, they stopped. And so that's when things really began to snowball. That is what led to the insurrection. That is where they organized the insurrection. The Facebook was actually where they did more of the Stop the Steal. But again, Stop the Steal, there was a Twitter DM list. And this is where it all happened, right? And I, to this day, believe that if Xitter had not turned off Donald Trump's Twitter account right after January 6th, I think there's a very good chance that Joe Biden would not have been inaugurated. It literally shut down the movement. It literally cut out their legs from underneath of them. And so, and immediately after that, like literally after Trump gets shut down, Elon Musk is like, let's go move. There is good reason to believe that we don't know whether Stephen Miller was in that original 2016 chat room. But there's good reason to believe that from that moment when Elon Musk was like, get off of Twitter, Miller was one of the people that was cultivating Elon Musk to buy it. And there's a text sent to Elon Musk from somebody who is suspected to be Miller, who says, here's what'll happen if you buy it. You'll bring all the Nazis back. He didn't say Nazis, but you'll bring all the banned people back, and then you'll bring the boss. So whoever it was, this is somebody who worked directly for Trump, you'll bring the boss back if that's cool with you. And sure enough, that's what happened. Musk came in, he discredited the moderation on Twitter directly, attacked all the people who did that moderation, lied about it, didn't talk about Trump's efforts to censor Twitter. And then, and one of the things that happened between 2022 and 2024 is that there was this very aggressive attack on moderation, on disinformation. And that's a story that unfortunately hasn't been told enough. It continues. Like they're still doing they're still doing hearings in Congress to attack these people who really were put out of work by efforts to defund these programs, these disinformation programs in universities and NGOs and so forth. And one of the results is that you didn't have moderation in 2024. And the other result of that is we don't know. Nobody quantified all of the disinformation on Twitter and Facebook in 2024, and we don't know where it came from. We know there was a great deal of Russian disinformation. We know that Musk did very little about it. We know there was there was violence being stoked on Twitter. Musk did very little about that. It is possible that Musk was in cahoots with Russia, helping Donald Trump win the election, and we would not know that. Not least because Pam Bondi came in and shut down all of the FBI's efforts to hunt that down. Kristi Noem shut down DHS's efforts to hunt that down. So we literally are blind about the degree to which disinformation on Xitter got Donald Trump elected. Full stop. And it's not just limited to the United States. Before the election, Elon Musk was basically testing how to use Twitter to start riots in English-speaking European countries. He started, elevated some of the fascists here who were protesting migrant housing. And that, of course, fed into, there was the riot in Dublin, and then the bigger riots in the UK. Musk was deliberately involved in that. Musk was deliberately pushing that. And what that led me to believe, and I believed in there was this moment on Election Day last year where it looked like Pennsylvania was going to go to Harris, and Musk and Trump and everyone else began making moves like they were going to start riots on Twitter. And then it became clear that Trump won and they didn't start the riots. So I also believed that had Harris won, we would have massive political violence. We would have the insurrection that they tried in 2021 and failed to carry out. So terrible machine for fascism. I think you and I agree on that. I, however, have not stopped on Twitter. I got rid of all of my old tweets going back to 2008. I diligently try and get rid of my DMs. I'm going to try and do a GDPR complaint with Twitter because I think that they have my old DMs archived someplace. So I'm cautious about how I use it, but I use it for a couple of very specific functions. And I'll start with a story. Like in the very first days of the administration, of the Trump administration, I went on Twitter and I was like, Pam Bondi, you've been confirmed 3 days. When do we get the Epstein files? And I just kept doing that, a couple days. And I did that because I knew that's the kind of thing that'll go viral on Twitter. And I knew that it's the kind of thing that will sow dissent among maggots. Now, I'm not responsible for that push remaining very, very active, but it is in fact the case that Pam Bondi doesn't have credibility among a certain brand of maggots because she has not released all of the Epstein files. And that's an example of how you can use Twitter against Trump. How you can use, there actually are a number of people in the administration who don't have credibility among maggots. Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are others. And you can play up that on Twitter. You can play up to Twitter's worst instincts. And I think that it is useful to do that. So here's what I use Twitter for, and then we can talk more about it. And then we can talk about how Gavin Newsom stole my fucking beat, the fucking California governor. One is I use Twitter to @ particularly senators, particularly Joni Ernst, Tom Tillis, and Bill Cassidy. I use it so every time the cabinet member that they were responsible for confirming, so Hegseth with the first two and RFK Jr. with Cassidy, I go on Twitter and I say, hey, at Senator Joni Ernst, how do you feel about Whiskey Pete Hegseth doing X, Y, and Z? And I do that because, while I think Democrats have done a really good job of pressuring Republicans about these votes, I don't think, this is a way to make that visible to them and to journalists who are still on Xitter, right? So it's not like Joni Ernst is going to be persuaded by my adding her, but it's going to add a little noise, right? Another thing I do go on Xitter because there are some libertarians who remain on Xitter and they're valuable. Some actually key immigration people are only on Xitter, and I will RT them there because I think their contributions are valuable. One thing I do, I like to make fun of Benny Johnson. Every time he posts something that is homoerotic about Donald Trump, I make fun of it. Or for example, this morning I screen capped a post he did trying to claim that the Minnesota assassin is a Waltz associate, and I used bright letters and I said, what do these guys have in common? Trump voters, So I kind of try and use Benny. I just have fun with Benny. Something that I have been doing from the start, but something that really took hold last week when Trump invaded Los Angeles, and I think it's instructive. I have tried since January to, every time Pam Bondi or Todd Blanche or Kash Patel says, we back the blue, we support law enforcement, I try and every single time RT it with a comment about them being silent on Trump's pardon of January 6 rioters. Every time. And when Trump invaded Los Angeles, I started seeing that from a lot more people, and a lot of straight people, a lot of people were like, how can you claim to back law enforcement when you pardoned all of these cop assailants? And that I think is the kind of thing that is really useful on Twitter, is to keep hammering the fact that Donald Trump pardoned a bunch of Jan 6ers. And also, I don't do this as much, but a lot of people, January 6th was spectacular. And so you can still use those images from January 6th to get attention on Twitter. I use Twitter to make fun of Whiskey Pete Hegseth. And I use it, I'm like Trump this way, that I like to give stupid nicknames. I think that they can be useful. And of course, I've nicknamed Pete Hegseth Whiskey Pete, and I've nicknamed Duffy Crash Duffy. And so I go on there and I criticize them, and I do something to, and I reiterate the nickname, so the nickname sticks. I'll be happy if Whiskey Pete is henceforth always known as Whiskey Pete. By the way, Whiskey Pete's is also the first casino that you come to when you drive from California to Las Vegas. So there's a cultural reference there. I try to sow. This is based on Peter Pomerantsev. I hope I said his name right. Wrote a book called How to. It's basically about how this British propagandist against Hitler succeeded. And one of the things he said is, you don't attack Hitler directly; you attack his aides, and you try and sow distrust of the aides. Again, going back to Pam Bondi and the Epstein files. And if you do that, then it's, that's, at least with Hitler, it was more effective than trying to attack Hitler personally. These aides are betraying Donald Trump. These aides are, why did Whiskey Pete fuck this up? Or why is Whiskey Pete betraying veterans? Why, those are the kinds of themes that not just are true, but also will feed into Twitter's conspiratorial mindset, right? If you can get Trump, you're not going to get Trump voters to turn on Trump, but if you can get them suspicious of Pam Bondi or Whiskey Pete or whomever, then that's going to be something that Trump has to deal with. Those are many of the things I do on Twitter. My favorite thing to do on Twitter, however, and again, this goes back to, we don't know whether Stephen Miller was in that original chat room in 2016, but he is very close to everybody he was. And it would not be surprising if he were in that chat room. And Stephen Miller is still incredibly effective on Xitter and incredibly reliant on Xitter. Stephen, if you go back to the election and look at how the eating cats and dogs went viral, there's a Jack Posobiec alt account that introduced it to Twitter. Stephen Miller RT'd it, JD RT'd it, and that's really how it went viral. And so Miller has he really commands great stature over on Twitter. And so I try and, honestly, at this point, I comment on much, if not most, of what he says, because he lies so much, but also because, again, if you want to feed conspiratorial, you can say one of the things that I think that is true, but I think also useful, which is that Stephen Miller lied about the number of migrants back in September of 2024. I saw a couple of Republicans who are trying to push back on Stephen Miller's gulag right now, and they still believe the lie that he told back in September. And so what you can do is, and again, I've been doing this since February, what you can do is say, Stephen Miller lied about how many migrants they are. He can't fulfill his campaign promises, and so he's going to kidnap your neighbor. And that's all true, but it's also the kind of message that I think goes well on Xitter. And so, like I did after the parade the other day, Stephen Miller posted a picture of him and his wife, and I said, "Hey, you got your girl back," right? I don't think it's true that Elon Musk was sleeping with Steve Miller's wife, but again, it's the kind of thing that feeds into Twitter. And the goal of this is to create friction and noise, right? If you interrupt Miller's ability to uninterruptedly spread lies and propaganda, then it makes it hard. It makes him less effective as a propagandist. And also, I think, let's be honest, the entire Republican Party hates Stephen Miller, but they're terrified of standing up to him. So, you and Andrea on your fascism, on your podcast, talk about how to make fun of dictators. You can't do that on Blue Sky. Blue Sky has a good function, but you can't make fun of Donald Trump on Blue Sky. You have to go on to Xitter to do it. And you can use some of, I'm not very good at going viral. Although, by the way, my numbers are going back up since Elon recently tweaked the algorithm again. Grok likes me, by the way. If I accidentally triggered my Grok profile the other day, and Grok's like, yeah, you really take it to Stephen Miller about his lies on his chaos and lies on immigration. I'm like, anyway, so one of the things that I don't think has gotten enough notice on the right, because on the left, sorry, because everyone is on Blue Sky and doesn't watch Xitter, although you do, is that Gavin Newsom, after he had that conversation a week ago Friday with Donald Trump, I think realized, I mean, obviously he was already trying to respond to the Kamala Harris loss by doing his own stupid podcast and embracing some really stupid policy decisions, but he has been trying to work through how to fix the messaging problem Kamala Harris had, which is that, you need to go through podcasts, you need to reach low information voters, and you need to push back against the wave of fascist disinformation. You need to do all of those things, and so Newsom, since the invasion of Los Angeles, he's been doing, he's done traditional press conferences. He's had podcasters in his response room pretty nonstop, all of them male, by the way, but he has really persistently given access to Pod Save America, Midas Touch, etc. But the other thing he's been doing is he's been trolling Stephen Miller relentlessly and hilariously. Oh, and also he's been memeing. He has, and this is great, but I think a lot of people in Blue Sky missed it. He took a couple of Trump's Truth Social tweets and put them to Emperor Palpatine voice, and then released, these were, I think, originally put out on TikTok and then released them onto Twitter. And they went pretty viral. They're hilarious, right? So Newsom was making fun of Trump's stupid Truth Social posts. And he's just been relentless about Stephen Miller, sometimes about his lies, but even memeing about Miller. So I feel like Governor Newsom has stolen my anti-Stephen Miller beat. But it is a very, I guess I'm willing to share with him, it's a very productive beat, in my opinion.
Thank you for your attention to this matter.